Hey guys, I thought I would do an episode on kind of the development of my hunting rifles over the years. What are my go-tos now, mistakes and foibles that I've made along the way, why I got to where I am, why my hunting rifles are what they are. That's what we're going to talk about today on Gunfighter Life. I'm going to forego the lengthy bio. If you care about my hunting rifles, you've likely listened before, so I'll do a real brief synopsis. First and foremost, a Christian, a servant of God, a follower of Jesus Christ. That is number one in everything that I do, and this podcast is no different. Been a professional gunfighter most of my adult life, military, law enforcement, private contracting, commander for tactical teams, top active shooters, and a lifelong hunter, which ties into today's episode. A lifelong hunter and professional big game hunter and guide. I have been blessed to hunt all over this beautiful country, from whitetail on the East Coast to mule deer and elk on the West Coast, gray squirrel on the East Coast to prairie dogs on the West Coast, and all manner of beasts, and even exotic animals when I was guiding, all the way up to and including bison. So with that, instead of just jumping into what my go-to rifles are now, I think you'll appreciate it more if I go through why they are what they are, and lessons learned along the way. Now, I grew up hunting at a very early age in the South, a poor boy, hunting for the traditional reason of literally putting meat on the table. Not going to say I didn't enjoy it, but that was kind of the mindset. Like, you go out to put meat on the table. That's what you do. Started walking around armed when I was, 7. My first gun that I can remember was the first firearm that I ever got. I didn't buy it. It was given to me by my uncle. Was a bolt-action 410 Mossberg. One of those screwing adjustable chokes. I was blessed to be able to give that to my nephew. That's a great little game getter. I hunted deer with it as well. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who's ever hunted deer with a 410 with the appropriate ammunition. Anyway, that was my first gun. Then I got a 20 gauge single shot. I hunted with a 22. And I don't remember which one I actually bought first, but I had saved up and bought either a 12 gauge Winchester 1300, or I bought a stainless steel all-weather Ruger 1022 because I didn't feel like keeping on borrowing one. I wanted my own. I still have that gun. It's hanging up on the weight rack. I still dry fire with it pretty regularly. It's a great gun. I guess technically that'd be my first rifle, the 22. Also started competition shooting with a very early age, but I was using the establishment's competition rifles for that. I was pretty poor growing up, but quickly found out that I had a knack for shooting and rifle shooting. Now, I was a ballistics nerd even back then, and when I was a lifeguard, one of my first real jobs other than like commercial fishing or landscaping or something like that, like a paycheck type job, not a for cash type job. Not that those aren't real jobs, but just was a lifeguard. This is before I joined the Marine Corps. I was a lifeguard. And when it was slow, rainy, no people, bad weather, I would read literal ballistics tables because I was a nerd. And this was like pre-internet. I mean, I'm sure the internet existed, but again, I was pretty poor. And I think we actually did get a computer at some point, the old dial-up internet, where you had to have like an AOL CD, if you remember those days. But I would sit there and look at these gun books, gun catalogs, and ballistics tables. And I got it in my head that the rifle that I needed to save up and buy was a 7mm Remington Magnum Ruger all-weather M77. And I did. I thought, based on these ballistics tables, like, this is the hot round. I'm going to get a 7mm Rem Mag. Keep in mind, I live in the Southeast. I needed a 7mm Rem Mag like I needed a sledgehammer to hang a picture frame on the wall. but I was young and naive, so I actually saved up and got this rifle. And I actually never killed a deer with that rifle because shortly after getting that rifle, I went hunting I sighted it and everything. I went hunting with my best friend at the time. And it was actually his turn to shoot a deer, so he shot a deer with it. And, the super long-range rifle I had set up with a big, powerful scope. Who knows what abominable scope I had on there at the time. Probably something way bigger than I needed. And he shot a deer with it at one of the longest fields we could hunt. And I think it was like 75 yards. He shot like halfway in the field, which is probably about 75 yards, if I remember correctly. Up until this point, I had hunted with a shotgun because that's a more practical tool when you're poor to put food on the table. But anyway, he shot a deer with this rifle. And I was shipping off for the Marine Corps, and I figured, well, I'm not going to be doing a lot of deer hunting, shipping out for the Marine Corps. And this, I had joined pre 9/11, but 9/11 had happened in the time I was waiting to ship out for boot camp. So I figured I'm not going to be doing a lot of deer hunting. So I let my buddy keep it. And he kept it in the back of his truck, and somebody broke in and stole it. So I never actually got to hunt with that rifle. I mean, I never actually shot a deer with that rifle. I went hunting with him with that rifle. Beautiful rifle. It was a good choice in rifle, a good choice. I still love stainless steel, and I still love the M77 kind of action, which we'll get into later. But I didn't need a 7mm Rem mag. I don't even think I need one now. And I live in pretty rugged, remote country up in the Wild West, up in, on the Canadian border west of Montana. And I still don't think I need a 7mm Rem mag. Certainly didn't need one to hunt whitetail and black bear on the East Coast. But anyway, I was a young boy, and that's what I thought I wanted, and I saved up and got it. I was kind of proud of myself for saving up and getting it. It was quite the thing for the time. But I never actually got to shoot a deer with it. My buddy did, and I'm glad that he did before it got stolen. Never did get that rifle back. But hey, anyway, I shipped off for the Marine Corps. As you might imagine, I was a little busy fighting a war. Multiple, if you count the multiple deployments. Anyway, when my time with the Marine Corps was up, I went to work almost immediately after for LAPD. After a little while and getting into the swing of things, making it through the academy, I got it in my head I wanted to start hunting and doing things again. Made a little bit more sensible choice this time. I got a Remington 700 in .308. Pretty standard. I'd seen, I was familiar with them from operations overseas and stuff, and I thought, 308's a good round, much more sensible than 7mm Rem mag. I think I probably did remember my shoulder, and how unpleasant the 7mm Rem mag was to shoot. The guy that I like to practice, I like to shoot, right? I would rather shoot a bunch and practice. I don't want a gun that I'm going to barely get sighted in on the bench and then shoot 1 or 2 rounds with. That's just not me. If I have a gun, I want to shoot it. So I got this 700 and .308, and to be fair to that 700, that older 700, this was pre a lot of their troubles and their bankruptcy debacle and stuff like that. I think it was a fine rifle, a little heavy. It was built for accuracy, and I did hunt with it. I remember this was way back when I was fully into, and this was pre when this is hot now. Back in the day, I was like, I'm going to be into this uber long range. Back then, it was all about the ballistic drop compensated reticles and the range finders, and dialing for dope and parallax and this and that, and I had all the fancy whiz-bang scopes with all the like at the time latest and greatest. And I was I did some more specialized stuff in law enforcement. I went way up in Northern California. This was back in way back, a long time ago, in a place far away where marijuana was actually really still illegal back then. Whereas at the time, it was highly illegal, and worked with the feds on some task forces without giving too much away. And anyway, the Mexican drug cartels, they realized instead of trying to get it across the border, which back then, again, a long time ago, far away, it was a lot more difficult, they figured they would just send guys here and grow massive amounts of marijuana in the western national forests and just sell it in the U.S., grow it in the U.S. We would be in charge of busting these guys, helicopters and full autos and the full deal, right? So I got to be up in Northern California, which is beautiful country. I decided I wanted to hunt pronghorn. And I did. And these are supposed to be like the super long range. And I was all into the long range. I had already won a gold medal in rifle shooting before I joined the Marine Corps. I was an expert rifleman in the Marine Corps, to give you an idea, not the gunfighter flex on you. But I would just say I was an accomplished marksman. Rifle expert for the Marine Corps back in the days when we qualified with iron sights. And I was all into the uber long range stuff, doing a lot of long range training, had a super long range. Was one of the trainers for this thing that, anyway, I had access to a lot of stuff. Let's just put it that way. Was all into this, and I was going to go pronghorn hunting, and I went pronghorn hunting. I got a pronghorn, a nice pronghorn. I shot him at like 150 yards. And I probably could have gotten closer. And I realized probably I don't need this big, heavy, uber long range rifle. By heavy, I mean it's probably 8 pounds. And I was finally kind of figuring out how I liked to hunt. It was big, wide open, massive country, millions of acres of national forest, national park, or national parks. I didn't hunt there, but BLM land is the word I was looking for. Just millions of acres of BLM land, like literally. I like to cover massive amounts of ground. And with being in the Marine Corps and deploying overseas in the desert, I knew that you could read micro-terrain, and being like an urban warfare, desert warfare instructor, even in what seems like a flat desert, even in what seems like a barren desert, you can usually find micro terrain, dry wadis, and things like that, and get pretty close to an adversary without them knowing you're there. You can do that in a desert. You can do it in most other environments too. And I realized that I like to be out and I like to be moving and I like to spot and stalk hunt. I started gravitating away from that 308. I kept it for a lot of years, and this is one of the guns I regret selling, but I just didn't want to take it because it was just, I didn't like to hunt that way. Started doing more of the spot and stalk hunting. Also doing a lot of prairie dog hunting at the time, so I went down to smaller calibers. After I gave up being a cop, because I just didn't, without getting into that, there's a lot of reasons why I'm not a cop and choose not to be a cop. But without getting into all that, I moved to Idaho, which was a great choice. I've lived in Idaho several times. I live in northern Idaho right now, my favorite state, and I've lived in a bunch of the states. I've been to 49 of the 50 states. I've lived in a lot of them. Like, I live as a nomad. I've lived in a lot of the states. Fourth or fifth time living in Idaho. I keep coming back. I love Idaho. Anyway, I started doing a lot of hunting in Idaho. I didn't want to carry that big, heavy 308. And by heavy, I mean it was like probably 8 or 9 pounds with a scope on it. It wasn't crazy heavy. It was covering a lot of ground, especially in the part of Idaho I like to hunt. It was big mountain country, especially for a southern boy. Talking big mountains. Talking like Bitterroot wilderness, river of no return wilderness, big wild country. So I went to Walmart and bought a Remington 700 in 243, a youth model. Not necessarily because I wanted a youth model, but because it was cheap and it was lightweight. It was small, light, handy, and I got it in 243. And I'll be honest, that one wasn't very accurate. It's still not very accurate. I still have that rifle. I kind of still have it, not because it's a good rifle, because I've killed so many animals with it, and that should tell you something. It's more about the fieldcraft than the rifle. I have a ton of notches in that stock. I slayed mule deer and elk and wolf, slain all manner of beasts with that little 243, because it was light and handy and I could cover ground. And I'd rather have a lighter rifle, even for elk hunting, that I could cover a lot of ground and get way back in the backcountry where there weren't going to be a lot of other hunters, where most other people don't go. And here's kind of a rule that I've heard. It's probably not actual accurate numbers, but like 90% of hunters hunt like 10% of the land. Most of them ride around on quads or whatever. They get off, they walk 50, 100 yards, and then they go back to their quad, have lunch or whatever, I don't know. But if you'll grab a couple of containers of trail mix or something and just hit it hard and just hike hard in the backcountry, you'll see very few people. I quickly learned a recipe for success for elk hunting, deer hunting, and stuff like that. Is just hit it hard opening day, like the night before, and just hike way in there. Way farther than most people are going to go into some nasty, gnarly terrain where most people can't go. Even with horses, it would be hard. And some people do get way back there in horses, but again, I'm not rolling in the dough making it rain. I don't have a team of pack horses, so I'm going on foot. Lamborghinis in a nice pack, good Eberly stock pack, and a lightweight 243, and I killed all manner of beasts with that. That said, that was a Remington 700. This might have been when I started having problems, or maybe it's because I bought it at Walmart. I don't know, but it was not very. It's maybe a 2 or 3 MOA rifle, even with hand loads. But I'm talking, if it's a 2 MOA rifle with hand loads, that's 6 inches at 300 yards. That's more than acceptable enough for me, because again, I like to spot and stalk and still hunt. I like to get within 200 yards if I can. So a 4-inch circle is absolutely acceptable with good hand loads and me knowing the ballistics performance. And here's the thing, knowing when to take a shot and when to not take a shot, and knowing the anatomy of the animal and knowing what shot angles I will accept and which ones I will not. Now, I'll be honest, I could have probably shot in a lot more effectively or not had to wait as long for a shot opportunity if I had had a bigger caliber. But the 243 is what I had, and that's what I killed a bunch of beasts with, because that's what I had. And it was lightweight and it was handy, and that was one of the primary attributes for me. Now, when I started doing a little bit better financially, I was working a lot more, but I was making a lot more money too, I saw a Kimber rifle, and is a Kimber Adirondack. And if you don't know, this is a sub 5 pound like mountain rifle. Just amazing. I did a whole episode on that called the Guide's Rifle. This is also, I got it before I was a guide, but this is the main rifle that I used when I was a guide. It's got notches in the stock too. Not only have I've slayed all kinds of like exotic animals with it too. It's just a great rifle. If you don't know, the Kimber is probably my number one recommendation. I've recommended it before, but if this is your first time on a hunting rifle episode, What I think is the epitome of the rifle action is the pre-64 Winchester Model 70. While the Kimber is the same action, just shrunk down because we have better metallurgy today. And you can say all you want about the guns back in the day were legendary, but our metallurgy is better today than it was then. Look at like the super steels we make knives out of today versus like a really good knife of World War II. It's not even close. Our metallurgy is better, so they can shrink that action down and make it super light. I love that Kimber Adirondack. I would love to recommend it. Sadly, I don't think they make it anymore. And that's more of like an expert's rifle because it's usually most people, especially if you're a beginner, you probably want something a little heavier than 5 pounds. And unless you're hiking miles and miles and miles and miles, probably another pound or two on the rifle is not going to matter. But I realized from that 243, I like a light, handy rifle. And I like it because I feel you get a lot more animals. You have that rifle at the ready. If the rifle is heavier, you're probably going to sling it. And then when an animal presents itself, you're going to miss it because he's going to be bounding away while you're trying to get your rifle at the ready. Whereas if it was ready, like at port arms or, in your support hand ready to throw up in your shoulder, you'd get a lot more animals. And I guess this is where I should get off into the philosophy of, I grew up hunting in the South, sitting on stands. I don't like sitting down and hunting. I really don't like it. It's rare for me to sit down more than 15 minutes when I'm hunting. I'll do it if like I hear animals coming and they're just taking their sweet time, coming through like some deep dark timber, or they're feeding and they're coming my way and it's more open country and I don't want to scare them and they're coming to me, then I'll sit and wait more than 15 minutes. But in general, I generally don't sit down more than 15 minutes when I'm hunting. I like to spot and stalk and still hunt. And I realize that about myself. That's how I like to hunt. If you like to sit on a stand, if you like to sit in a blind and shoot deer over a feeder because that's how you like to get meat for the family and watch the sunset, I'm cool with that. This is not like a moral debate. I'm just saying that I like to spot and stalk and still hunt in big open country. In fact, unless I really need to put meat in the freezer, I will often take the chance and go somewhere I've never been over somewhere I know there's probably going to be deer just so I can see new country. There's so much beautiful country to explore just in this part of Idaho, just in northern Idaho. I'm surrounded by literal millions of acres of literal wilderness, like wilderness without roads, without people. To give you an idea, I went hunting this past year and I got a late season archery elk tag. So I went hunting with my recurve bow and I saw 6 big bull elk, and I was not able to seal the deal because when not to shoot. That's a good skill. I was not able to get within 20 yards of these big bull elk, although I saw 6 really nice bulls. Anyway, I shot plenty of bull elk, but it would have been cool to get one with a recurve. I didn't. But the point of this is, I walked for lots of miles in fresh snow. Great stalking weather. Fresh snow, lots of tracks, easy to follow. Not only did I not see another person when I was out hunting, once I parked the truck and got fairly far away from the truck because of a road or whatever, but not only did I not see a person, I didn't see a single set of human footprints in the snow the whole time I was hunting elk. That's what I'm talking about. I love that. It's one of the reasons I love the West. And you don't have to live, it's public land. It's your land too, as much as it's my land. I'm very blessed that I get to enjoy this country that I was blessed to survive fighting for. And I like that. I like hunting in big open country. I like exploring new places. So that's how I like to hunt. So this is geared towards my rifles and how I like to hunt. I like to get inside of 200 yards, 250 yards max. I'll shoot longer than that if I have to, but I generally try not to. I've taken one elk further than that. But in general, I try to get in that. And you think about that. I know that it's the tactical or the super cool hunting trend now to hunt long range and this long range stuff. And that's just not, I don't like that. And I'm going to tell you why. And it's called math. And this is coming from somebody that's done a lot of long range shooting. I don't want to be a stolen valor guy here. And I've done enough. I don't need to make stuff up. I was never a sniper. But I have been in different times a designated marksman. A decent amount of long-range shooting. That I can't do it. Here's the thing, going back to math. Even if you have all the cool whiz-bang gadgets, you can't cheat math. And what I mean by that is time of flight. And I have shot animals when they're laying down bedding. Especially if I can stalk up on an animal when it's sleeping. I think that's awesome. But unless they are laying down bedding or sleeping, the vast amount of time that a cervid, like a deer, elk, many other creatures too, that they're awake, they're either eating, which means they're walking and eating because they're grazers, or they're moving to or from an area. Either way, you get to a point where even if everything is right, even if you call the wind exactly right and there's no gusts of wind, there's no change of wind direction in the canyon between you and them, you call that shot perfectly. You know the yardage exactly. You know your ballistic coefficient exactly. And that bullet goes exactly where, like, your gun is 1/10 of an MOA. Your gun's 0.1 inches. You know, it'll shoot an inch at 1,000 yards, which is crazy, but you get the idea. That bullet goes exactly where your crosshairs were. You're not guaranteed to take that animal ethically, because in the time of flight, if the time of flight is more than, let's say, a half a second to a second, that's one step for an elk. One step for a deer can move them from that bullet going in the kill zone and that bullet being a bad shot. And I looked up, just for rough numbers, a pretty vanilla load, 168 grain 308 at 400 yards. The time of flight is 0.6677. That's over half a second at 400 yards. And it's not like it's linear, because that bullet is slowing down, and it slows down not linearly either. It starts to shed velocity pretty good at distance. That number is going to grow and grow and grow. It's already well over a half second at 400 yards. And that's just one load. It will vary, but that gives you an idea. The time of flight. That even if that bullet goes exactly where you were aiming, there's no guarantee that animal is going to be where you were aiming at longer distances. Would I take that shot if my life depended on it and I hadn't eaten and I was starving to death? Yeah, I'll be honest, I would take that shot. But for a normal day of hunting, when I can hunt another day, why? Right? It's not a guarantee. I don't care how good a shot you are. It's how math works. Also, here's just a thing. If I shoot an elk and I've never done this, but if I shoot an elk at 1,000 yards away, I have to walk up to that elk and butcher him, true or false. So why don't I just walk up way closer and shoot him way closer, where I have a lot more advantage? I have to walk up there anyway. We might think of this as close range today, but 200 yards is 2 entire football fields. If you can't walk within 2 football fields of an animal without giving yourself away, I say you're lacking fieldcraft, not cool whiz-bang gear. I'll be honest, there's one time that I can honestly remember where I couldn't do that, and I shot the animal farther away just because terrain wouldn't allow me to get there in the time before it got dark. I don't remember if elk season was running out. It was like my last day to hunt or something like that, and I did shoot an elk farther than that. It was the one time, and even then I probably shouldn't have. I did. Still got the elk, but you get the idea. Almost always you can get closer. And not only that, if you get all the stuff geared towards longer range, my experience, you're going to miss more animals than you get if you hunt the way that I hunt. I don't hunt off a quad. I don't, glass on a quad and then walk 50 yards to a ridge and set a tripod down. That's not how I hunt. In my experience, and this is guiding too, hunters miss a lot more game because an animal is close and they don't get a shot off in time because they're too caught up in messing with gear. Their optic is too big. Rifle's too heavy, so they have it slung when it should have been in their hands, when they should have been at the low ready. We're in a good area, and they should be ready for a quick shot, but they're not because they have too much gear and it's too heavy, so they've got it slung across their back, and then, beautiful big bull elk walks right out in front of them, and they're not ready. I've been there. That's why I'm saying I prefer lighter. So, getting back to that Kimber Adirondack, when I got it, I went to a LPVO, and I was running... Going back to my law enforcement days and specialized law enforcement stuff, I was also getting back into competition shooting, and I was doing 3-gun, and this was before I saw anybody run an LPVO, and I'm not saying I'm the first guy that did it. I'm sure I'm not. But I saw the LPVOs being used in competition in 3-gun, and I thought, why don't I do that on my police rifle? And I quickly realized how much I like LPVOs. And that's what I run most of the time on my hunting rifles now. That Kimber guide rifle that I have, killed all kinds of beasts with that too, has an LPVO on it. It's a Leupold VX something, 1.5-5. Phenomenal hunting rifle. After that, I liked that rifle, but I was also guiding at the time when the ammo apocalypse of COVID hit, and didn't think I was going to be able to get enough ammo to keep hunting with the 6.5 Creedmoor. And I had a bunch of 308 stored up for other like tactical stuff. So I got a similar Kimber, a Kimber Hunter in 308. That was also a very good rifle. Same thing, that Winchester Model 70 controlled round feed action. Looking down, very light in 308. My Kimber Adirondack is in 6.5 Creedmoor, and not for crazy long range stuff. I actually don't even like the long range super high BC bullets, but it's a good rifle, and that's a good pairing in such a lightweight rifle because it does have a bit of recoil because again it weighs 4 point something pounds. And I mounted that with an LPVO, and I mounted my Kimber Hunter 308 first with a Vortex Eagle 1:8 because I thought, ooh, on paper that looks great, and then I looked through it. And what a piece of junk that scope was. It looked like somebody hocked a loogie on the lens and smeared it around. It might have been 8 power in theory, but Leupold at 4 power was more clear, or at 5 power was more clear than that Strike Eagle at 8. That might insult some people, but I don't. Maybe Vortex's higher end stuff is good. I'm sure it probably is, but their Strike Eagle, I was not happy. I almost immediately took it off and put a Leupold on it. Leupold LPVO. Now, for years I had wanted to try the scout rifle concept. So I recently got, I'll tie that in, but recently got a scout rifle, which is also based on, loosely, a Winchester Pre-64 control round feed action, stainless steel. And the Kimbers are also stainless steel. I'm a big on stainless steel. I hunt hard. If I can deal with the conditions, my rifle had better be able to deal with the conditions. I don't like scraping rust off a gun with a razor blade. I've done it. Not my favorite. If you can go stainless, in my opinion, almost always go stainless. You're going to hunt on the back 40, and if it gets rainy, you're going to go home and wipe your gun down. That's fine. That's not me. In fact, I killed my last deer with that scout rifle in the rain. It was raining exactly at the time, but it rained quite a bit that day. I was pretty wet. Anyway, I wanted to try the scout rifle, and I liked that action, so I got a Ruger Scout rifle. I mounted it with the scout scope because I wanted to try the true scout rifle concept with the forward-mounted scope. It's, to me, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other on the scout scope thing. I always shoot both eyes open anyway. I don't care what magnification scope it is. I don't care if it's shotgun, handgun, rifle. Shoot both eyes open. I learned that early on in precision rifle shooting. It's an old, antiquated technique. Don't shoot with one eye closed. Don't do it for tactical scenarios because you don't want to get shot and you don't want to give away a big chunk of your peripheral vision. Don't do it for precision shooting because your eyes are going to get fatigued. You're not used to just hanging out with one eye closed. Strains the face muscles. That's why we didn't do it for precision shooting. Don't do it for shotgun. Don't do it for handgun. Don't do it for anything. So that's supposed to be one of the big reasons of the scout scope is you can shoot both eyes open. But I do that anyway with any scope. So, I do like the balance of the rifle better. So I do like that. I mounted that with a fixed 2 power. Again, I'm not big on the high power scopes. And here's the thing. Out of all big game, I specified big game hunting. Out of all the big game hunting that I have ever done, I have never needed more than 4 power. Period. Gasp. I know. Call me crazy. I've never needed more than 4 power. Here's the thing. I started precision shooting back with iron sights when that was a discipline. Back then it was 4-position NRA, standing, sealing, kneeling, prone. And in the Marine Corps, shout out to 500 yards, iron sights. If I can hit a man-sized target prone with an old, beat-up, raggedy, rattling around M16 A2 with iron sights, it looked like it got drugged behind a 1.5 for miles, and get hits on a man-sized target at 500 yards with iron sights. Now, hear me on this. I'm not saying it's the same. It's not a 1-to-1 ratio, right? If it's combat, I'm trying to get a hit on that target to get him down so I can get more hits on target. We're also talking about an entire man-sized silhouette. We're not talking about the much smaller, what I would consider acceptable kill zone on a deer. Those are two completely different things. Just because I can get a hit on a man-sized silhouette at 500 yards with irons doesn't mean I condone shooting at trying to get a hit in the silhouette of an animal at 500 yards just because you can hit them. I'm doing that to make the point that perhaps these big giant scopes with big giant objective lenses and giant magnification is not as necessary as marketing would have you believe. You get the idea. I'm not a big fan. And I've seen more people, again, miss game because they had too much scope. Their scope was dialed in too far. It was too big, too heavy. Especially if you're talking about inside 300 yards. Let's make the math easy. Let's say 400 yards. It makes it 4 times magnification. This is not how this works. It doesn't make the rifle more accurate, right? The rifle, if I put it in a vise with no sights or the best scope in the world or iron sights, the rifle itself is exactly the same amount of accurate. It'll still shoot whatever MOA it's going to shoot. But it makes the object bigger. So a deer at 400 yards in a 4x scope is the same as a deer with iron sights at 100 yards. If you can't hit a deer at iron sights with iron sights at 100 yards, unless you have some kind of vision problem, you probably should work on your marksmanship, not get a bigger scope. That's just my opinion. That guide rifle does have a 1-5. That's because that's what that VX whatever it is came in. But I don't think I've ever needed more than 4 power for big game. Now for some other stuff, yeah, coyote hunting where the shot's much smaller target, for prairie dog hunting, for that kind of thing, for some varmints, rock chucks, woodchucks, whistle pigs, that kind of thing. I do sometimes like more scope, and the 243 now has I don't think it has anything on it right now because I don't really use it, but I wouldn't mind putting like a 3-9 on it because if I'm shooting a coyote at several hundred yards away, that's a lot smaller target. You get the idea. That's what I like. When I settled on the Alaska rifle, which I went to live and hunt in Alaska, I got 30-06. I want something a little bit bigger than the 308 because the 30-06, people might say they're the same, but they're not the same when it comes to heavier bullets. I wanted to be able to hunt with a 220 grain. I was going to be in a big, high-density brown bear area, like high densities of brown bear where I was going to be living and hunting. And you might think that's not enough gun, but when I did some research and looked, the number one guide rifle in Alaska, the number one caliber was 30-06. So I figured, yeah. And I've learned that lesson before. You probably don't need a Magnum. You probably need to shoot better. That might offend some Magnum people, and I'm not against Magnums. If you can shoot a Magnum well, that's great. If you're really good with a standard caliber and you want to move up to a Magnum, that's fine. But in my opinion, a lot of people use it as a crutch. They know they're not real good. They're not real confident, so they think a more powerful bullet is going to make up for it. And that's the wrong reason to use a Magnum. Anyway, I got the 30-06, and I actually this time, by God's grace, was able to get, I thought it was out of my price range, but I found one that had a little bit of wear to it, but the action and stuff was still smooth. It was still good on the inside, clean bore, an actual pre-64 Winchester Model 70 and 30-06 featherweight, because again, I like a light rifle. Now, the featherweight is a real good balance in 30-06. It's, I forget, like 7 pounds, which is good. It's heavier than I would like for mountain hunting in Idaho, but not bad. But if I'm hunting bigger stuff, a 30-06 is nice. Again, people might say it's the same as a 308, but in like a 150 grain bullet, yeah, it can be. It can be pretty comparable. When you talk about 180, 200, 220 grain, 190 grain, that whole heavier weight range, it's not even a comparison. In fact, I used to hand load, back when I did a lot of bear hunting and stuff with the 308, I would hand load a 220 grain, or 200 grain, sorry, a 200 grain in the 308. I don't even know that anybody makes a factory 200 grain load for the 308. I can get a factory 220 grain load for the 06. So, forget what I was even talking about. Let's focus on let's do some philosophizing. No, that's seriously. Let's do some philosophy. First of all, why bolt-action rifle? Why are bolt-action rifles kind of the standard? Not that you have to hunt with a bolt-action rifle, right? You want to hunt with a single shot? That's fantastic. You want to hunt with the lever action? Okay. But why is bolt action the standard, and kind of why is it the bolt action is the standard for me, for practical hunting? I would love one day I could justify it just because I love them. They're beautiful. Get like a Ruger RSI single shot Ruger number 1 in, I don't know, like 7x57 or 6.5x55 Swede, just for the classic beauty and hunting of it. But it's less practical to me, and here's why. Do some philosophy on why the bolt action is the preeminent hunting action. Just because of the way they're built, and not that a single shot rifle can't be super accurate, but in general, a bolt action rifle can be made accurate very easily because you can do what's called free float and or bed it very easily. Most of the time, like a single shot, you have an attached forend, which may or may not, depending on barrel harmonics and a bunch of other things. There's a lot of, how do I put this? There's a lot of fine detail and strings and chords that go into a symphony that is accuracy in a rifle. The bolt action just kind of lends itself to that with the way that it can be built, the way the action screws can be mounted into the stock. They are very simple machine. You might think that like a single shot would be simpler. It might be simpler to operate, but if you look at like the moving parts and stuff, it's hard to get simpler than a simple bolt action rifle. Like, they can be made crazy simple and rugged is a big reason because I like to hunt hard. Like, they're a robust, rugged action. Also, rate of fire. Now, they're not as fast as a semi-auto. They're not as fast even as a pump action, and there are good pump action center fire rifles, the Remington 760. But it's not a combat rifle, right? If you're taking a second shot on game, it probably means that it's moved after its first shot, which means you have to reacquire the target. And the time you fire the shot, if you're good at cycling a bolt after you fire the shot, you can cycle it while you reacquire the target. So it has a reasonable rate of fire for the intended purpose that it's made for. The semi-auto faster? Yeah. Even can a semi-auto nowadays be made very, very accurate? Yes, it can. But it's not as simple. It's generally going to be heavier. You can get a lightweight. There are some really lightweight like semi-auto 308s now. I don't know of any that are as light as my bolt action Kimber Adirondack, which I could have gotten in 308. It just happens to be in 6.5 Creedmoor, but it's 4 pounds and some ounces. Right? So it's simple. They can be made very strong, very accurate, and they have a reasonable rate of fire. That's kind of why the bolt action. They're simple, they're rugged, they're reliable, they're proven, centuries-old proven technology at this point. They're sleek, they're svelte, which if you're, climbing through willows, sliding down a shale bank because you lost your footing, trying to wade through blackberry bushes after bear, that kind of stuff, like the sleekness and the svelteness of the rifle itself kind of make a difference. So that's why bolt action is the standard, and that's why it's my go-to as well. There are other things, and again, I would love one day to have a really nice like single-shot rifle just to do it. But that's why the bolt action is kind of standard for those attributes. Now, there's lots of different bolt actions, and I'll be the first to tell you that push feeds are a lot more common today. And there's two main reasons. They are cheaper. They are simpler. If you look at a push feed bolt versus a control round feed bolt, and I did a whole episode on this, so if you want to get way down in the minutia on this, go listen to that episode. Push feed versus control round feed. Real quick, push feed, generally when you start working the action, the next round will pop up, and then the bolt will shove it forward into the chamber. A control round feed, there's a giant claw on the front of that bolt that grabs the rim of the cartridge and controls it into the chamber and out of the chamber. It's a more controlled action. Push feeds, if you look at the bolts, they're generally a lot simpler. Because they're simpler, they're cheaper. And I think that's a big reason. If you look at the budget rifles and the quasi-budget rifles, they are way more common. Like the Ruger American, the Savage Axis, the Tikka T3s, they're push feeds. Another reason is, since they're simpler, less going on in the bolt, there's less it has to work together absolutely precisely, which lends themselves to be more accurate. Now, you can get a very accurate controlled round feed, but it's probably going to cost you. Like the Kimbers, that's my number one recommendation, they guarantee like a 1 MOA, which a lot of budget rifles and push feed guarantee a 1 MOA. I would say a 1 MOA is more than good enough for the kind of hunting that I like to do. But you're talking about like a Kimber's probably a $1,100-$1,200 rifle, whereas you could get a Ruger American that's probably as or more accurate for $700. So that's a big difference. However, accuracy is not all there is. I love an accurate rifle, but I also like controlled feed, and I realized that the more that I hunted, there's less that can go wrong with a controlled round feed, especially if you're excited, especially if you're trying to work that bolt really fast. And for some reason you got to make a fast follow-up shot. Your client wounded an animal, it's getting in a way, and you got to get rounds in that animal, or you're just going to be tracking it for days, right? And you don't want a chance to double feed. Another big one, control round feeds are really, really sought after for dangerous game people, African hunters that use bolt actions, things like that. Control round feed is sought after because there's really no way that I can think of that you can have a double feed. And although the bolt action itself is super reliable, the operator, especially when you're really stressed, might not be 100% reliable. They might run that bolt partially and then not run it all the way back or all the way forward and try again and induce a malfunction. Also, if you're in some kind of unconventional position, like on your back, on your side, whatever, that claw is having positive control of that round. Whereas a push feed, theoretically, if you like pulled the bolt back and then you fell or something and that round is just hanging there and you fell on your side, that round could just fall out. Just to give you an idea of it's a pretty obscure scenario, but it could happen. There's just less that can go wrong with a control round feed. Here's another thing is that if you look at the claw, and it's more like a claw, it's like a giant metal claw that grabs a big portion, I don't know exactly what portion, but a large portion of that brass rim is grabbed by that controlled round feed. If you have a really dirty chamber, like some dirt got in your chamber, your rounds got dirty, and you just shoved it in there for some kind of dangerous scenario and you had to shove that round in there, there's a lot less chance that it's going to get stuck in the chamber after it fires and like fire forms with dirt in there. There's a lot more of a chance you're going to be able to rip that dirty brass out of the chamber, the controlled round feed. Broken extractors, even on a bolt action, are not that uncommon. Well, let's just say they're a lot more common in a push feed than a controlled round feed. I like a controlled round feed. I specifically like, and this is one of the things that's common, I still have that old 243 just because I've killed so much stuff with it. But I don't even have a scope on it now. Cannibalized it for something else. I haven't sold it yet. But for those reasons, I like control round feed. And I did a whole episode on that if you want to listen. But I really like, especially after getting an actual pre-64 Winchester Model 70, that action and the Kimber and the Ruger, not the American, but the Ruger M77, Ruger Hawkeye, that's based on that pre-64 Winchester Model 70 action, which dates back even further to the 1902 Springfield and to the old Mauser. And if you want to dig into the history, you can do that, but I don't want to get too far in the weeds on that. But just that controlled round feed, especially the Winchester pre-64 Model 70, and I should say they went back to that. Now, there was a long period of time where they went to a push feed in an effort to make the rifles cheaper. They have for a while now gone back to the controlled round feed. So the new Winchester Model 70s are controlled round feed again. Anyway, that style action with that 3-position safety, and I like that because the 3-position safety means you have the weapon on fire and you can work the bolt. You can put it on safe and still work the bolt, but the weapon won't fire. Or you can put the safety all the way forward in its 3rd position and lock the action closed. This is more important than it might seem. Like if you're sitting on a stand, it probably makes no difference. If you're crawling through willows, right, wading through blackberries, stuff like that, you can get that action to open up and drop around on the ground, or just have it halfway open, and you go to shoot and you realize, oh, your bolt's halfway up, right? That 3-position safety is really nice. It's also really intuitive and really fast if that's what you're used to, and I think now I'm pretty much standardized on it. It's just a really intuitive, really well thought out safety. I prefer that safety, and I prefer that big claw extractor. In fact, I wouldn't want to make this trade, but if you said like you could have a 1 MOA push feed rifle, or you could have a 1.25 MOA controlled round feed rifle, I would give up 25% in accuracy to have a controlled round feed. Again, because that's plenty accurate for the distances I'm going to hunt. And I take the majority of my animals offhand. Offhand, like shooting standing unsupported. So that, it's just minutia. That controlled round feed is not. I like that feature. I also mentioned before that I really like stainless steel. So if we're looking at kind of my development of hunting rifles over time, I like a pre-64 Winchester Model 70 action. There are other actions that aren't bad, but it's talk about proven. That is a legendary proven action. If you're not, you probably are familiar, but if you're not, that's called the Rifleman's Rifle, the pre-64 Winchester Model 70. That featherweight I have is just, the one thing I don't like about it is that it's blued, because that was what you did at the time. I think they'd even started making that kind of rifle in stainless steel yet. Just can't bring myself to like Cerakote it. It's just too, I'll just take a stainless steel rifle if I'm going out in weather like that for now. But other than that one, all the newer rifles that I have are stainless steel and controlled round feed Winchester Model 70 type actions, whether it's a Kimber or a Ruger M77 Ruger Scout rifle. And going back, that was actually the first rifle I ever bought. I like the Ruger. I like the stainless steel. Ruger's always kind of been known for making a good stainless steel rifle. Not always, but they for a long time have been known for making a good stainless steel rifle. And going back to that old, 7mm Ren Mag, maybe not a wise choice in caliber, especially for where I lived, but a very wise choice in rifle. If you can find one of those old, and it was one of those old canoe paddle stocks, the Zytel stocks, just gorgeous. I kind of keep my eye open for one of those, but they've really gone up in price. It wasn't a cheap rifle when I saved up when I was a boy and bought it, but they're really not cheap now. Anyway, so that kind of action is what I like, a bolt action. Have I hunted with other things? Yeah. Have I hunted with an AR? Sure. Do I still often hunt with a shotgun? And going back to that, if you're going to put meat on the table, if you want a long gun to put meat on the table, when I'm going out to just live in the wilderness, I'll take a shotgun. If I'm going out to specifically hunt elk, I'll take a rifle. If I'm going out to just live off the land and there's a bunch of stuff in season, I might shoot a grouse, I might shoot a deer, I might have a nasty run-in with a bear. I had a few close run-ins with bear. I want a shotgun. So don't discount the shotgun, but for a hunting rifle, my development has kind of been towards that pre-64 Winchester controlled round feed, and if I can get it in stainless, I like it in stainless. Oh, and I really like backup iron sights. That's hard to find today. I should mention that. It's not a must. Not all my go-to hunting rifles have that, but I really, really like it. And if it's going to be an all-around rifle, I really want iron sights. Like, that was one of my criteria for my Alaska rifle. I wanted iron sights. I break stuff. I break stuff a lot. I break guns a lot. I break optics. I hunt hard, and if I can do it, my equipment ought to be able to do it. I really like stainless. So yeah, that's kind of my development over time. If you're asking for what my recommendation is, if you hunt any at all like me, Winchester pre-64 type action. It doesn't have to be a Winchester. In fact, I prefer Kimber. They're lighter and sleeker and svelter. But that, one of the newer Winchesters, they make the control round feed again. Stainless steel. If you can get backup iron sights, or it's going to be like your one go-to rifle, I really recommend backup iron sights. Assuming you know how to shoot with iron sights. A lot of people today, I don't think they even would know how to shoot with iron sights or wouldn't zero the iron sights, in which case it would make very little difference. But it's a hard use tool. Like, you're going on long hunts, and I like to go on long hunts in the backcountry. If I fall and break my scope, I can take the scope off and I don't have to lose my entire hunt. I like that. So if that's important to you, I think far too few rifles today come with backup iron sights, come with like real good iron sights. That old pre-64 Winchester Model 70 featherweight 30-06 got beautiful iron sights. 4 caliber, if you live east of the Mississippi, right? A good deer caliber will also double as a black bear caliber. I know you can get some big black bear, but you can kill them with pretty much any of these calibers. For deer, I love 243. 708 is good. 308 is good. If you start talking about Western, you start talking about like Southwest, 243 is still good. 25-06 is really good. Don't discount the 25-06. 60 Remington has kind of fallen by the wayside now, but 6.5 Creedmoor is good. Even if you're not going to long range hunt with it, it's still a good round. 6.5 Creedmoor is good. Kind of in that transition zone. 270 is good. 270 is a good Western cartridge. It has been. It's kind of the marginal. Although I've taken elk with 243, and that's because that's what I had, and I was judicious with my shot placement. I wouldn't recommend it. I would say a 270 is fine for elk if you know what you're doing and are not just going to take just random shots, which you shouldn't do with any caliber. Give up a little bit of shot angle with a 270. I would consider it like the bottom line for most people for elk. But 270 is great, a great Western cartridge. 308 is also real good. 30-06 is probably the most versatile all-around caliber still, because it'll do everything the 308 will do, but it will handle the heavier bullets better. So if you're going in some real thick country, you think out west, especially if you're from the East Coast, you think everything out west is wide open and like no country for old men and like tumbleweeds, but it's not. Even in most deserts, you can get in some real thick stuff. Like if you ever hunt like in the Sonoran Desert, and I have, it's some real thick cactusy country. If you're hunting real thick country, even out west, right, or hunting big bear or a bigger animal, even elk in like thick timber, you might want a bigger, heavier bullet because it opens up for me more shot angles, a higher sectional density bullet. There are shot angles that I would take on an elk with a 220 grain 6 that I wouldn't take with a 130 grain 270. Now, a broadside at 100 yards, I do fine with either caliber. It does open up more opportunity. So 30-06 is still a very, very versatile cartridge. And those are the mainstream ones. There's lots of other good calibers. I think I mentioned 7.8, but 7x57 Mauser. Not a lot of rifles chamber that anymore, but it's a phenomenal caliber. I would say, unless you have a real specific reason for it and you're already really good with a standard caliber, don't go Magnum. Unless you're like going to Africa to hunt, like Cape Buffalo, then you probably want a Magnum of some sort, right? But I'm talking about standard North American, standard hunting rifle, short action versus long action. To me, that's minutia. Sleek, svelte, handy. Stainless steel, control round feed, backup iron sights, and sadly that's a harder combination to get than you might think. So anyway, that's probably enough about me and my hunting rifle development philosophy and how I like to hunt. Maybe more than you wanted to know, maybe not, because I got a question about that from a patron, and I thought, instead of just telling you what I hunt with, it makes more sense in context. And it took a long time to get here, but hopefully you appreciate why. And even if you don't want to hunt that way, if you want to hunt off a stand over a pile of corn, I'm not putting that down. That is still way better than going and buying meat wrapped in cellophane. Venison peanut butter curry is still venison peanut butter curry. I'm just telling you how I like to hunt. I mostly just like to be out and in the wild and exploring big rugged country. I like that. I like that as much or more than taking the animal. How I like to hunt, spot and stalk and still hunt. Anyway, I appreciate you guys listening. I appreciate all that you do. If you're not subscribed, hopefully this reminder will get you to like and subscribe to the show. Leave a review if you can. Hit some stars. Your tactical tip of the day. This goes for pretty much any rifle optic combination, but really don't skimp on the mounts and don't skimp on the mounting. And I don't just mean, even if it's a sporting goods store and they say they'll mount it, I mean have like a good person that knows what they're doing mount your optic. I mean with a torque wrench. Like not they just throw it on and they tighten it. If it's a 22 or something, that's fine. But have the proper tools. Be fairly confident that your reticle is level. Use proper torque specs and get good mounts. That's your big part of the tactical tip. You could have, multi-$1,000 rifle and a multi-$1,000 optic. I'm not saying you need that. But if you do that and you get the cheapest, chintziest, mounts, and they're not torqued properly, you're just asking for trouble. Get good mounts. Don't skimp on the mounts. Warren makes good mounts. Tally makes good mounts. They're not the only ones. They're generally my go-tos. DNZ makes some really, really good rock-solid mounts. DNZ. I don't make them for everything, or I probably use them for just about everything, but the DNZ, like Delta November Zulu, they make really good. If you can get like a good one-piece direct mount, I like less components. To me is generally better, and it's a pretty simple, solid mounting system. But don't skimp on the mounts. And again, if you're not confident, get somebody that knows what they're doing to mount that scope. Use proper torque specs, all that stuff. Your tactical verse of the day. For by you I can run against a troop. By my God I can leap over a wall. As for God, his way is perfect. The word of the Lord is proven. He is a shield to all who trust in him. For who is God except the Lord? And who is rock except our God? God is my strength and power, and he makes my way perfect. He makes my feet like the feet of a deer and sets me on high places. He teaches my hands to make war so that my arms can bend a bow of bronze. It's a beautiful part of 2 Samuel. With that, thanks for listening, and have a blessed day.